Warning! This show contains blunt opinions, unfiltered language, and the occasional truth bomb that might offend your favorite fact checker. If you came here for safe spaces, soft voices, or sanitized sound bites, this ain't that show. This is Data and Dissonance, where free speech still means free.
Monday, October 6th, 2025. The Supreme Court's back in session. The government's still partially shut down, and TikTok just got another stay of execution. The headlines are loud, the spin is louder, and we're here to separate the data from the drama. Tonight, the court takes aim at Hawaii's carry law. Washington keeps pointing fingers instead of passing budgets, and big tech gets another shot at playing God. 3 big questions, 4 bold voices. Let's make Monday matter. Before we dive in, quick note for our listeners. Friday night's second segment mentioned the Department of Justice shutting down a division as if it just happened. That story was from last year, not this week. That's on me. We check, we verify, and when we miss, we own it publicly. That's how credibility works, and that's why you keep tuning in. All right, let's bring in the crew, because Mondays need more than coffee. They need controversy. Brian MAGA Fire himself. He brings the heat, the hammer, and zero hesitation. Rachel, the voice of reason with a fact sheet thicker than CNN's retraction log. Daniel, our resident tinfoil tactician, the guy who finds the shadow in every shiny headline. And Skylar, our progressive powerhouse, fighting for green dreams in a red, white, and blue world. Together, they make the noise worth listening to. And I just try to keep it all from catching fire. All right, so here we go. First Monday in October, the Supreme Court is back, and the first headline on the docket is already lighting up both coasts. Hawaii's 2023 carry law basically says this: you can't carry on private property unless the owner puts up a sign explicitly saying you can. If they don't, you're trespassing with a firearm. The lower court said it was reasonable. Gun rights groups say it's the legal version of duct taping the Second Amendment. So that's the question tonight. Does Hawaii's new carry law rewrite the Second Amendment, or just test its boundaries? Brian, light the fuse for us.
Artie, this is the kind of thing the founders warned us about when they said government power creeps in slowly, wrapped in politeness. Hawaii's law isn't about safety, it's about control. It turns a right into a permission slip. If the government can say you can't carry unless every private property owner signs off, then they've effectively outlawed carry without ever having to vote for a ban. They've made it the default position that your freedom exists only when someone else approves it. That's not liberty, that's landlord tyranny. And you can bet every liberal governor from California to New York is taking notes. This isn't about keeping guns off beaches. It's about keeping the Constitution out of reach.
Brian, I swear you could turn a Waffle House menu into a Declaration of Independence. Somewhere, a Ninth Circuit judge just spilled his oat milk. But I can't say you're wrong. This law sounds like it was written by someone who's never been outside a gated community. Rachel, balance it out for us. What's your read?
Look, the core issue here isn't just guns. It's the tension between 2 constitutional values: property rights and individual rights. You absolutely have the right to say what happens on your property, but the Second Amendment was never meant to be treated like a zoning permit. Hawaii's law flips the burden of proof. It assumes no one wants lawful carry unless they advertise otherwise. That's clever legislating, but it's also dangerous precedent. The court may not want to open the floodgates, but it can't ignore the inversion of a fundamental right. Expect a narrow ruling. Probably something that protects property rights, but stops the state from setting the presumption that freedom starts at no.
Rachel with the calm and reasoned take. Thank God somebody on this show still reads the footnotes. Meanwhile, Brian's probably engraving the Federalist Papers on his AR. Daniel, I know your conspiracy board's already glowing red. What do you see behind the curtain on this one?
Oh, it's glowing all right, Artie. Every time the left loses a gun case, they don't reform the law. They rebrand the restriction. They call it sensitive places, public safety optimization, or some Orwellian nonsense like community peace zoning. But what it really is is death by regulation. You can't win in court? Fine. Drown people in rules until they give up. That's how they do it. Bureaucratic warfare. The real trick here is psychological. Make gun owners feel like criminals for simply carrying. It's not just about the law, it's about conditioning compliance. And if that doesn't sound familiar, read a history book that hasn't been edited by a university diversity committee.
Daniel, somewhere in DC, a bureaucrat just felt a chill run down his spine and doesn't know why. But you're right. Death by regulation is the new sport in blue states. Skylar, I can see you shaking your head. Come on in before Brian throws a pocket constitution at you.
Yeah, I'm shaking my head because everyone's acting like this law means people can't own or defend themselves. It doesn't. It just means the community decides the rules for shared spaces. Hawaii's packed with tourists, bars, and public events. Adding guns to that mix is asking for chaos. The state's not banning ownership, it's setting boundaries. And honestly, if you have to ask permission to build a fence or a deck, it's not unreasonable to require consent before you bring a loaded firearm into someone's establishment. Local safety matters too. You can't just shout freedom while ignoring context.
Skylar, I'll give you points for consistency. You could probably find a way to make the DMV sound noble. But hey, you made a good point. Context does matter. The problem is, so does the Constitution, and last I checked, it wasn't written in disappearing ink. This case is going to tell us whether the right to carry still means what it says, or if it's just a museum piece for tourists to admire. All right, so let's leave Hawaii's beaches and head straight into the swamp, where apparently the government being open is the exception, not the rule. We're now into week 2 of the shutdown. National parks are locked, paychecks are frozen, and politicians are still holding press conferences instead of meetings. Here's the question, crew. Is this shutdown just the usual budget gridlock? Or has DC crossed into full-blown political sabotage? Brian, I can already see steam coming out of your hat, so go ahead and set it off.
Sabotage, plain and simple. This isn't about numbers on a spreadsheet. It's about kneecapping Trump's second term before it can hit stride. The permanent bureaucracy and career politicians can't stand that their gravy train got derailed, so they're staging a slow-motion strike under the banner of fiscal responsibility. Every agency that screams the loudest for funding is the same one that ignored border security, overspent on DEI consultants, or mailed out fake COVID relief checks. The left figured out that if they can't win elections, they can just grind the system to a halt. It's not governing, it's hostage-taking, and the ransom is your tax dollars.
Brian, I swear if you ever run for office, your campaign slogan's gonna be, "I told you so." But you're not wrong. DC does treat Shutdown like a performance art piece now. Rachel, you're usually the one trying to find the middle lane, if there's even one left. What's your take?
Look, Washington's gridlock used to be political theater. Now it's psychological warfare. Everyone's performing for social media clips instead of negotiating like adults. But both parties share blame here. Republicans want spending cuts without specifying where. Democrats want blank checks with moral hashtags attached. The result? Ordinary Americans become collateral damage while the media monetizes the chaos. The shutdown itself isn't the problem. It's the indifference behind it. Government doesn't even pretend to care about optics anymore. They know outrage sells and governance doesn't. That's how we end up paying people to argue about paying people.
Rachel, that's the most poetic way I've ever heard anyone say we're being robbed politely. Somewhere, C-SPAN just picked up a poetry segment. Daniel, you've probably got a conspiracy map that connects this shutdown to the World Economic Forum, a weather balloon, and Taylor Swift's tour schedule. So what's the real game here?
Oh, it's not even a secret game anymore, Artie. This shutdown is a controlled demolition. The elites learned from 2020 that chaos creates compliance. You wreck the system just enough that people beg for stability, even if it means giving up power. So they keep the crisis simmering, headlines boiling. So when they roll out reforms, digital currency, federal oversight of budgets, emergency executive powers. Everyone cheers because they're tired of dysfunction. It's like a fire department starting small fires to prove its own necessity. Washington doesn't hate shutdowns. They need them to justify the next centralization of control.
Daniel, I'm not saying you're wrong, but you just made me want to check my Venmo balance for globalist fingerprints. Skylar, come in before I start hiding cash in my coffee can. How do you see it? Dysfunction or design?
It's dysfunction, Artie, but it's not all some deep state master plan. It's burnout, gridlock, and ego overload. Both sides have become so obsessed with proving the other's evil that compromise feels like treason. The result is a paralysis, and while DC burns, millions of federal workers go unpaid, families stress about bills, and programs people actually depend on grind to a halt. The system's broken because no one wants to fix it. They just want to weaponize it. Maybe we stop blaming shadow cabals and start blaming career politicians who forgot what the word service means.
Skylar coming in with the kumbaya grenade. Props for trying to make Congress sound redeemable. But I'll say this. If you need a paycheck from taxpayers, you should probably care when the paychecks stop. Washington's not just gridlocked. It's addicted to dysfunction. And like any addict, it won't stop until the pain outweighs the high. All right, let's wrap tonight with a question that hits the crossroads of technology, free speech, and paranoia. The app that turned teenagers into pundits and pundits into teenagers. TikTok. After the Supreme Court upheld Congress's power to ban foreign-controlled platforms, the White House gave ByteDance until December 16th to divest or disappear. That's the third extension, which tells me either they can't cut the cord or they don't want to. So here's the question, crew. Is banning TikTok a matter of national security or censorship with better branding? Brian, I can already see you typing "China owns your data" in all caps. So go ahead and kick it off.
Look, Artie, it's National Security 101. If your country's biggest geopolitical rival owns a platform with 170 million American users, you don't need a tinfoil hat to see the risk. You need common sense. The CCP doesn't play nice. They collect, manipulate, and weaponize information. TikTok isn't some innocent dance app. It's digital fentanyl. It's designed to addict and divide. You can see it in the content algorithms. Chinese kids get STEM videos. Our kids get degen nonsense and gender theory tutorials. That's not coincidence. That's strategy. If the US lets this slide, we might as well hand Beijing the remote and ask what channel they'd like us on.
Brian, that's the first time I've ever heard someone call a social media app digital fentanyl. And honestly, I might put that on a mug. Somewhere in Silicon Valley, a coder just broke into a cold sweat. Rachel, you've been known to find nuance in the noise. Where's the line between protection and overreach?
The line is blurry, and that's the danger. National security concerns are absolutely legitimate. China's data practices are shady, to put it mildly. But here's the catch. Once you normalize the government deciding which apps you can or can't use, it's hard to stop. Today it's TikTok. Tomorrow it's a podcast or a news site someone labels as foreign influence. We've already seen how vague disinformation definitions get weaponized. If we really want security, the answer isn't bans. It's data regulation across all platforms, including the American ones. Because if your privacy depends on a flag, you don't have privacy. You have marketing.
Rachel dropping truth like a privacy policy with actual honesty. Which, by the way, would crash half of Silicon Valley's servers. Daniel, I can already feel you reaching for that string and pin board again. What's the bigger play behind this one?
Oh, it's simple, Artie. They want control of information flow. The ruling class realized after 2016 that they can't risk platforms outside their influence. TikTok's just the pretext. They'll use national security to create a precedent. Government-approved media pipelines. Step 1, ban a Chinese app. Step 2, define foreign influence broadly enough to include domestic dissent. Step 3, claim it's all to protect democracy. And you know what's wild? They don't even need to hide it anymore. They brag about content moderation partnerships. That's just code for censorship outsourcing. The only reason they haven't gone full Ministry of Truth yet is because they still need the illusion of consent.
Daniel, I'm starting to think you sleep with one eye open and the other reading FOIA requests. But I'll give you this. Every time we hear the word security, someone's rights end up on the chopping block. Skylar, you're up. I know you've got the progressive pitch ready. Tell me why this isn't a slippery slope to Big Brother.
Because sometimes, Artie, a firewall isn't a cage. It's a lock on the front door. TikTok's ties to China are real, and pretending otherwise is naive. But I don't want the government deciding which apps survive, either. The solution isn't bans or blind trust, it's oversight. Transparent data laws, public audits, and penalties that actually bite. Americans deserve digital safety without turning tech into a political weapon. We can walk and chew freedom at the same time. And by the way, if we spent half as much time regulating US data brokers as we do banning Chinese apps, your grandmother's Facebook quiz wouldn't be selling her social security number to 12 different companies.
Skylar, that might be the most relatable thing you've said all month. Because I swear every time my mom clicks a Facebook link, 3 people in Beijing get my credit score. But you're right about one thing. We've built an online Wild West and handed the sheriff's badge to whoever yells national security the loudest. Here's the truth. Data is the new oil, and every country's drilling. The question is whether we want a free market or a monitored one. TikTok might be the test case, but it's not the end of the story. It's the opening argument. All right, crew. 3 questions, 3 battlegrounds. The Constitution, the Capitol, and the cloud. From Hawaii's Carry Law to Washington's clown show to TikTok's ticking clock, one thing's clear. We're living in a time where every right has a price tag, and the people cashing the checks aren't the ones paying the cost. So before we close it out, let's get everyone's final thoughts for this Monday. What stood out, what matters, and what listeners should carry into the week? Brian, fire us off.
Look, it all connects. The Second Amendment fight, the shutdown, the tech war. It's all the same disease with different symptoms. The people in power don't trust regular Americans to make their own choices. They want you dependent, disarmed, and distracted. And every time we let them slide just this once, they push a little further. The answer isn't outrage. It's action, vote, show up, speak out, and don't apologize for believing that freedom's supposed to be messy, loud, and inconvenient. That's the point.
Brian dropping bars like a founding father with Wi-Fi. Rachel, what do you got?
What stuck out to me tonight is how quickly we trade complexity for certainty. Every issue we talked about, guns, budgets, tech, has real nuance, but nuance doesn't trend. The algorithms and the politicians both feed off outrage, not understanding. If we want a better country, we've got to stop rewarding drama and start demanding clarity. Facts are boring, but they build civilizations. Feelings build mobs. Choose wisely.
Rachel, that was so logical, the internet just flagged you as a foreign bot. Daniel, close out your board for the night. What's your final word?
My takeaway? Every system eventually protects itself, not the people. Whether it's the courts, Congress, or corporations, they all adapt to preserve power. That's why you have to question everything, not because you're paranoid, but because you're paying attention. Transparency shouldn't be treated like a conspiracy theory. The minute truth becomes dangerous, lies become policy. That's where we are, and that's why this show exists, to say the quiet part out loud.
Daniel, somewhere a bureaucrat just clutched his clipboard. Skylar, round us out.
For me, tonight's through line is accountability. Everyone talks about freedom, but real freedom depends on responsibility, personal, political, and corporate. If we want rights that last, we've got to use them with wisdom, not just noise. The gun debate, the shutdown, the tech wars, they're all reminders that democracy's not self-cleaning. We have to keep scrubbing. That's the work, even when it's uncomfortable, especially when it's uncomfortable.
You know, listening to all of that, I'm reminded how this country works best when we argue loud and love louder. We don't have to agree on every detail. Hell, we probably never will. But we can't let division become the default setting. The Supreme Court will do what it does. Congress will keep doing whatever that is, and the tech world will pretend it's neutral while selling your soul one click at a time. But at the end of the day, that's what this show's about. Not sides, not slogans, but signal through the noise. I'm Artie, and this was your Monday drive time edition of Data and Dissonance. We'll see you tomorrow at 5. America still belongs to the people willing to stand up, speak truth, and stir thought. Tonight's episode is brought to you by the Caleb Rourke thriller series, The Covenant Protocol and the Prophet Directive, with Book 3, Black Echo Rising on Deck. Dive into the world of espionage, AI, and shadow governments. Available now on Amazon. And while you're there, grab our Data and Dissonance merch. High Lakes Light Roast, Rock Creek Medium, and Bitterroot Dark French, roasted in the USA. Plus mugs, trucker hats, hoodies, bumper stickers, and our Gen X shirt line. Support the show, sip Patriot coffee, and keep free speech caffeinated.